Civilization and Its Discontents, Freud, Jack Torrance, and the Madness of the Overlook Hotel. Stanley Kubrick's The Shining is often lauded for its psychological complexity, and nowhere is this more evident than in its subtle engagement with Sigmund Freud's Civilization and Its Discontents. Freud's 1930 masterpiece explores the tension between humanity's instinctual drives and the constraints of society, a conflict that plays out hilariously and horrifyingly in the crumbling psyche of Jack Torrance. Kubrick uses Freud's theories to turn Jack's descent into madness into both a cautionary tale and a dark comedy about the pitfalls of modern life, ambition, and axe-wielding as a coping mechanism. Let's dive into how Kubrick weaves Freud's ideas into The Shining, transforming Jack Torrance into the ultimate poster child for the failures of civilization. Freud's big idea: civilization is a buzzkill. In Civilization and Its Discontents, Freud argues that civilization forces humans to suppress their primal instincts, our desires for violence, power, and pleasure, in the name of social order. This repression, Freud says, leads to widespread unhappiness and a lingering sense of dissatisfaction. Jack as civilization's reject, Jack Torrance starts off as a man who has already lost the battle between his instincts and societal expectations. A failed writer, recovering alcoholic and resentful family man, Jack embodies Freud's notion of a man chafing under the constraints of civilization. He's not just discontent. He's a powder keg. The Overlook as civilization itself. The Overlook Hotel, with its impossible architecture and oppressive history, represents the weight of societal expectations. It's a grand, gilded prison, much like civilization in Freud's eyes, where Jack's instincts bubble to the surface in increasingly unhinged ways. Jack's ego versus ID, a losing battle. Freud's theory of the psyche is all about balance. The ID, primal desires, battles the ego, rationality, and the superego, morality. In Jack Torrance, this balance is laughably absent. The ID runs amok. Jack's ID dominates from the moment he steps into the Overlook. He dreams of power, fame, and a whiskey-filled good time, and he's more than happy to smash anything or anyone who stands in his way. The ego's last gasp. Early in the film, Jack tries to maintain his ego's control, giving off the vibe of a man who has read one too many self-help books. But as the ghosts of the Overlook whisper sweet nothings into his ears, the ego's voice becomes a faint cry, drowned out by the blood-soaked roar of his ID. The superego? Who needs it? Jack's moral compass is already shaky at the start, and by the time he's chatting with ghostly bartender Lloyd, the superego is nowhere to be found. His idea of correcting his family is more American Psycho than Dr. Spock. The Overlook's ghosts, repressed desires, run wild. Freud believed that repressed instincts don't just disappear. They resurface, often in disturbing ways. The Overlook's ghosts are the perfect metaphor for these repressed drives, embodying Jack's unchecked ID. Lloyd the bartender, as the ID's enabler, Lloyd doesn't just serve drinks, he serves validation. The white man's burden, Jack quips, channeling every primal grievance he's ever repressed. Lloyd nods along like a psychotic therapist, urging Jack to embrace his basest instincts. Room 237, Lust and Revulsion. Jack's encounter with the woman in room 237 is textbook Freud. What begins as lustful indulgence morphs into horror, a perfect visualization of the consequences of succumbing to repressed desires. Freud would probably call it the return of the repressed, and then charge Jack for the session. Wendy and Danny, civilization's last stand. Freud didn't just focus on individual psychology, he also explored how family dynamics reflect the tension between instincts and societal expectations. In The Shining, Wendy and Danny represent civilization's attempt to keep Jack's ID in check. Wendy, As the superego's proxy, Wendy spends the entire film trying to maintain order, embodying the societal constraints Jack so despises. Her attempts to keep Danny safe and Jack sane are noble but doomed, like trying to put a band-aid on a volcano. Danny as the future of civilization, Danny, with his psychic shining abilities, represents the potential for a new kind of balance, one that acknowledges the subconscious while refusing to be controlled by it. Too bad Jack would rather chase him through a hedge maze than attend a family therapy session. The Overlook as a Freudian playground. The Overlook Hotel itself feels designed to illustrate Freud's theories, from its claustrophobic hallways to its impossible geometry. The hedge maze as the subconscious. The hedge maze, where Jack loses himself in a futile pursuit of control, is a literal labyrinth of his mind. While Danny navigates it with ease, Jack flails, symbolizing his inability to reconcile his fractured psyche. Rivers of blood as sublimation, the elevators that unleash torrents of blood are a hilariously over-the-top visualization of Freud's idea of sublimation, the rechanneling of repressed instincts. Here, the hotel's history of violence literally overflows, drowning any hope of repression. The ballrooms of the mind, the Gold Room, with its endless ghostly parties, represents the veneer of civilization, polished, elegant, and utterly deranged. It's where Jack's ID and ego do the tango, cheered on by the spirits of every repressed instinct that ever haunted humanity. The comedy of civilization's failure. Kubrick, ever the dark humorist, infuses The Shining with a kind of Freudian slapstick, turning Jack's unravelling into a grotesque parody of modern life. Jack as civilization's clown, watching Jack attempt to balance his role as a writer, father, and caretaker is both tragic and absurd. His descent into madness feels inevitable, like watching someone try to juggle flaming torches while drunk. The hotel as Freud's punchline, the Overlook's ghosts aren't just haunting Jack, they're laughing at him, gleefully tearing apart the fragile facade of his sanity. The whole film feels like a cosmic joke about the futility of repression. Conclusion: civilization's biggest discontent. In The Shining, Stanley Kubrick turns Freud's civilization and its discontents into a darkly hilarious exploration of humanity's eternal struggle between instinct and order. Jack Torrance, with his misplaced ambition and unchecked ID, becomes a tragicomic figure, a man trying to write the great American novel while his subconscious throws axes at his family. The Overlook Hotel, with its ghosts, blood rivers, and impossible architecture, serves as a microcosm of Freud's vision of civilization, beautiful, terrifying, and hilariously doomed. Kubrick's genius lies in making us laugh, shudder, and maybe even reflect on our own discontents, all while thanking our lucky stars we don't have an axe-wielding Jack chasing us through the hedge maze of our psyches.